Hi, Koa.
Hey, Mackenzie, how you doing?
Good.
Good to hear.
Kinda.
Good to hear.
I'm okay, I think, but
See. Long day?
kind of. I've been just like going through all my classes to see like what's in store.
Mm,
And that's never a fun thing. I feel like it's always overwhelming at first, but
uh, that's
you
fair. Yeah,
know,
that's fair.
you know how it goes. How are you though? What have you been up to?
Um, Not much. Mostly just practicing since I'm going to be helping run this workshop, but doing all right.
Are you nervous?
Yeah, I originally was
Don't
just
be.
going to
You're
be
gonna
like,
be amazing.
thank you. I was originally supposed to do like just spontaneously like jump in on some things, but I was like, hey, what if you actually like took over a section of it? Like, okay.
Oh gosh. Yeah, when Shay was like, "Would you be interested in doing any of the workshops?" I was like, "No." Thank you,
Understandable.
but no. Hi, everyone.
Hello.
Hello.
How's it going?
Pretty
Good.
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 A
You
little
having a
bit
good day?
stressed.
What's up?
A little bit stressed, but pretty good.
Stressful start to the semester.
Yeah, you know, when you're just like going through all the syllabus and like figuring it out, it's a little bit much, but it's okay. It's part of the process.
Yeah, it can be overwhelming. Just take it one day at a time. It'll be okay.
Yeah, that's what I keep telling myself. I'm like, okay, I've been here for 3 years. I've gotten this far. We're gonna be fine.
Yes, that's true. That's a really good way to look at it. Like gotten this far, I'll get through it. I got to tell myself that with different things. Okay, just highlighting who's here so far. Hi, Brianna.
Hello, how are you doing?
Pretty good. How are you?
Pretty good. It's first full day back. I tapped out with Canvas. I keep getting kicked out because it keeps glitching. So I was like, I'm gonna give that a break until this evening.
Oh, I'm sorry. Are you having connection problems today?
I think so. And then I think because everyone's back on remote learning, I'm assuming that Canvas is like rebooting a lot. And I haven't been on for a few weeks. So, but yeah, I think connection also. My whole family is stay at home, work at home right now. So Wi-Fi is very busy than normal. So,
Oh my.
but
Hi,
all
Dorothy. Dorothy, I'm sorry to bother you about this right now, but I said I would say something if I saw you. Did you get your sped sci pitch?
Oh, I still need to do that. I actually just checked my email and I was like, oh, I'm planning to do it today and put it on the sheet.
Okay, sure. Good to know. And just let Shay know when you get a chance because he's trying to get those on YouTube.
Will do. I'll send him an email. Thank you for reminding me.
Yeah, of course. Of course. Thank you. I would pause the recording for something like that, but I can't. I have no control over this recording. So I'm sorry. I'm sorry, Dorothy, that you're not the only one. So, for the record, okay. So we are here to talk about the best practices for VoiceThread tutoring. And I think this is everybody that's going to be here live so we can get started. Koa is here with me. Thank you so much, Koa, for sharing your wisdom and knowledge on asynchronous tutoring via VoiceThread. I think it's really exciting what we're doing. For those of you who don't know, this asynchronous tutoring via VoiceThread is really unique. Most asynchronous tutoring takes place just via text. Like people send in their paper and somebody like tracks changes or leaves comments in Word or something, and then they get that back. So the video voice component of it is really unique, which is why Sohi and I are doing research on it right now. And we're really excited about it. And I think that you all are doing a fantastic job with best practices. And I just want to really look over what some of the things are that people are doing, remind ourselves what the best practices are, and then share some of the innovative practices that other tutors have started to do on VoiceThread. Because I do poke around on there and I see, oh my gosh, I never thought to do that, or what a cool development project that Jordan had last semester, where she, made a sheet for VoiceThread tutoring, things like that. So what we're going to do today, our agenda is just that I'm going to go over our best practices for VoiceThread tutoring sheet. And that is really important to have handy for every appointment. And then Koa is going to walk us through a strong example of VoiceThread tutoring that shows us some of the innovative or best practices at play. And then I want to share some of the cool ideas that I've seen tutors do recently on VoiceThread, and I want to hear from you as well. So if you are coming to this workshop and you've done VoiceThread tutoring, which I think everybody here has, then please speak up and share your wisdom and advice, because this is new, not just to us, but I think to like writing center work in general. So very exciting stuff here. So I am going to place the best practices for VoiceThread tutoring in the chat. And I'm going to ask you to do something. If you haven't already bookmarked this sheet, please bookmark it now, because really, ideally, everybody has this up when they start giving VoiceThread feedback, so that we can be sure to remember to touch on all these things that are important during a session. And it is unique because we can't really have something like this up with a synchronous session, but in some ways VoiceThread makes us better practitioners because we can have a list up to make sure we don't forget. And I will say there's a lot of really cool scientific research on checklists preventing tons of accidents and deaths and things. There was when people first started flying airplanes, there was a problem because there's a huge list that you have to do before you can even fly an airplane, like a basic, 2-person airplane even. And people would forget little things, that they'd done 100 times. And the one invention that has saved more lives than any other with airline travel is a checklist. So now you have to go over a checklist every time you fly as a pilot, and they really drill it into pilots in training. So I feel like this is kind of the same thing, right? Where we might not feel like we need it, but it keeps us to be the best practitioners we can be. So I just want to go over this briefly, and then I'm going to hand it over to Koa here. So the first thing that we want to do is identify in the VoiceThread session what the student wants, right? Let me share my screen actually. That way we can all see it together. Okay. Identify what the student wants. What questions do they have? How do they want to receive the feedback? Do they want closed captioning? If you did not get the email from the student assistant telling you these things, reach out to them and ask them to send it to you. I have seen a few VoiceThreads go through where the tutor never received the form, and so they're kind of guessing at these things. That's not good. That's not good for you, not best for the student. They asked certain questions, they asked for it a certain way. So we want to get back to them, make sure that they're getting that feedback that they asked for. So please, if you cannot find the email that says what the student wanted, please do touch base with the student assistant, text them or whatever, to get the information you need. Secondly, you want to read the prompt. We do require them to upload it. And I have seen a lot of them are even including like professors' feedback, which is awesome. So please read that. I saw that you continue to do that. I think it's awesome to have and take notes on, so that as you plan your comments, you can refer back to the prompt or the professor's comments. Read through the paper or project as a whole. This is a unique thing that's way more comfortable with VoiceThread, I think, where nobody's like sitting there staring at you as you read their paper. So you can read the whole thing, you can scan the whole thing, whatever you need to do before diving in with comments, and you can plan your comments so that you don't have to record yourself and then go back and re-record, or, oh, I forgot this or that. So please create some notes as you do that. And then as you start to make comments, you all do a fantastic job at introducing yourself, but make sure that you introduce yourself and your name. You confirm what assignment you're there for. So thanks for submitting your Sci 312 Mover response paper for VoiceThread feedback, right? And then you give a little explanation of how VoiceThread works. Sometimes I've seen we forget this part a little bit, because I think it's, again, just part of like going through and doing a lot of these, but making sure they know that they can't comment back and leave you a question or something, and that they can make an appointment. Sometimes we do have students come in and they say like, how do I talk to the tutor now about their comments. So we want to make sure we're setting them up for success for that. So that's great. Any questions or thoughts on this so far? Okay.
I do have a quick question.
Yes.
I thought recently we always include closed captioning now. If I'm not mistaken.
That's great. I'm glad that you're doing that. That's awesome. Did you guys start that in fall when I was away? That's wonderful.
Okay.
We should. Not everyone is doing it. So, because I just was going through them for this workshop, it's not all there. So please do that. That's a wonderful idea. And just remember to turn it on. That's great. I'll change this paper. Thank you.
I have a quick question on that. So
Yeah.
from the async appointments that I've had, I've clicked the closed captioning and I don't see any captions pulling up when I'm talking. Is there some other enabling feature that I need to do to like get that started? I just don't know what it looks like on their end. Because I do press it, I just don't know where it goes or how it's being seen.
Sure. So, okay, let's troubleshoot this.
I do have VoiceThread up if you want me to like share my screen and show that.
Thank you. I do too. Go ahead, Koa. I'm going to stop sharing. Will you take the reins on this?
Okay, sure. So I was also a little confused on this. So this is the example I will be going over in a little bit. But it's very simple. Although you just hit the CC in the top right, you hit English, and then when you first start talking, when you first make comments, especially after doing this, nothing will show up. You have to give it about like a minute or so and refresh the page. When you refresh it, when you start doing it, you have to make sure that this is on as well. You may see things like this where it's like, oh, edit captions, download, remove. You don't have to worry about any of that. But this edit captions won't even show up when you first hit in the top right, turn on captions. You have to refresh the page and give it a little bit to basically process what you're saying. And then after that, when it starts going through and you have the CC on, you can see that there is there. And as always, there are usually some grammatical mistakes, which you can do the edit captions. You can go into all these details where you can specifically edit this stuff.
Awesome. That's amazing. Thank you. I didn't know that. I hadn't been refreshing it, so I'll have to add that into my routine.
Thank you so much, Koa. I appreciate that. And yes, please do check the captions. Sometimes they're really off. So just be sure, like, you don't have to painstakingly go through and make sure it's grammar free. You don't have time for that really. And, it might not be a good use of your time with giving feedback, but it is worth like checking. I had one where it had me talking about like chocolate, and I definitely never said chocolate. Like I was like, what? Where is it getting this from? So you never know like what it's picking up in the background or something, or if it thinks you have like a weird accent like it did for me. So anyway, thank you. Okay, so we'll go back to our sheet here. Okay, so frame your feedback. This is something I've talked to a few tutors about, not that they're not doing it, but it's something they have to think about, like where they say it's easy to you want to go in and be like, just do this. And we forget because they're not face to face with us sometimes that we need to be super nice about our criticisms or couch our critiques, right? So make sure that, you're going back and doing this. This is just an example of a compliment sandwich where you give a little compliment. I like how you tie it up as a strong example, but what can make it even stronger is a summarizing sentence that transitions us into your next paragraph. You go from talking about the negative effects of vaping to teens who vape. These ideas are definitely related, and I can see why you put these paragraphs together. Nice work. Now, how can you tie up your paragraph on negative effects of vaping and connect it explicitly to teens who vape? Another thing you can see here is how explicit this person is being. So, you're tying everything together. You have a compliment sandwich and then a nudge question that reiterates exactly what you're talking about. That kind of goes with this next one. We want to be as specific as possible because they cannot ask clarifying questions. So try to imagine yourself hearing this, and it's all imagination, right? But hearing it without maybe being inside of your head as the tutor. And is it clear? Should you redo the comment? Is it focused? Expand on why you're making a suggestion. So you need a topic sentence for this paragraph is not good feedback, right? Why? What's missing here? What does the topic sentence need to say? It seemed, the top of this paragraph seems to be about different benefits of visiting the WMC, but I'm not sure because you don't have a topic sentence, right? So how can you summarize and introduce it in one sentence? The nudge question. So there you go. What was the other thing I was going to say here? Just that you want to keep your comments focused. So I have seen most of you are doing a really excellent job at this, where you are commenting in short comments in like bursts and not doing it all as one long one. But occasionally I've seen a tutor where the comments are all connected, or a lot of them are. And you want to break that up, only because it's hard to find exactly where you said something if they're going back to re-listen to it. And that's one of the things that students are loving most about this, is re-listening to it and going, what did they say about that? Let me go back and listen again. So make sure that you're sort of keeping them shorter and breaking them up across the pages. And like I said, for the most part, you all are doing an excellent job at this. Any questions on the comments or notes? Okay. Make sure you hone in on higher order concerns first, but again, go back to the students' prompt and any questions that they submitted and prioritize those, of course. You want to address lower order concerns with an example. This is something I have seen people do such a cool job at, and something I did not think to do that I learned from one of the tutors here is they actually took like screenshots of our citation guide, and then like we're including it. Like you can upload a little document, at the end of VoiceThread, and talking about it and circling the correct example with the marker tool. That is so cool. Like with lower order concerns, it doesn't help to be like, so after the title, you put a comma, and talk through like a citation out loud without an example, right? So if you want to do like a screenshot and then add it to the VoiceThread, you can. I think it's so genius. I can't take credit for it. Several tutors were doing that, and I don't know whose idea it was originally. To be honest, I couldn't track that down. So if one of you know, we can thank that person. But I thought that was really cool. And a lot of you are providing the links to the citation guide and grammar issue. Okay, I'm going to finish up here quickly so Koa can get started, but you want to make sure that you summarize and sign off. So before you sign off, which everybody's doing, make sure that you summarize what you went over. And we do have a really cool worksheet now that helps you do that I'm going to show you here in a second, that Jordan made. But basically you want to give your takeaways. You want to reiterate that they can make an appointment to get their questions answered. You want to give them our survey. We have our center survey. We have an asynchronous VoiceThread tutoring survey that has to do with Sohi and I's study, and they can win $25 if they do it. So please link that up every time. That's why I want you to bookmark this too, so you can include all these links. And if they need a tutorial visit form as proof of visit, we now have it for the asynchronous tutoring. They can fill it out themselves. It's set up that they need a unique VoiceThread link to fill it out. So hopefully they're not able to really fill it out more than once. That's the whole idea with the same link, okay? And then a closing thank you. And then here's at the bottom here, I put a VoiceThread checklist that just goes over everything we talked about, except that I've linked everything a little more easily here. So there's the center survey, invitation to the asynchronous tutoring study, the tutorial visit form if they need it. And here is that asynchronous tutoring notes document. This is something Jordan created, where what you can do is create a copy of this. So just go to File and make a copy, or download it into Word if you want. Put your name, the course and title, highlight what their writing concerns are and what they said was the question. And then you can go through and make your notes on it. And it can be like an overview. So this does not replace, I should be clear, does not replace the video voice comments that you're making. It's just to give an overview and to help you track as you go through and read everything. You could start making notes on here for yourself and then include it at the end and upload it. Here's our tutorial feedback survey, but you do want to make sure that you link all those surveys in the chat as well, because we have several. So let me show you. Okay. I'm going to show you some things in VoiceThread here. Okay. Okay, here it is. When the Zoom bar covers what you need to like click on? Yes, that's what was happening. Okay, so here is an example from Jordan where she uploaded this VoiceThread feedback sheet at the end of her appointment here. And you can do that by adding a comment. That's a file that you upload. Okay. So you'd have to download it as a Word file and then re-upload it. That's what I would recommend doing. I probably wouldn't link it just because, I don't know. You could, I guess, if you do it like so they can view and all that. You could do that if you want to. But yeah, big thank you to Jordan for sure. And then, yeah, I just thought that these were really good examples. You do want to make sure that you're using
really liking how
the video. Most people are, but as much as you can, you want to use the video. Kenzie, this is you. Good job. I thought you did a really good job on this one with the citations. You talk through and you use the marker tool really well on here, where you're underlining things, circling things. Really good job walking through on the citations. That's why I kept that one. And then this one I thought was a really good example too of just the text was there as she was talking, but I think this was an earlier one before you guys were doing I didn't realize that was now a rule, which is a great rule. Okay, that you have to include the closed captioning. Any questions or thoughts on the best practices sheet? Okay, I'm going to say one more thing, and that I forgot to say, and on the bottom of that best practices sheet, it says, did you mark the appointment as attended? It is your responsibility as the tutor to please mark it as attended. That is something you're doing selfishly for me, I'll say. So if you do, I don't know, care that I'm not spending hours looking up whether they were attended or not at the end of the semester, please do us a favor and mark that attended. I really appreciate it. And so does Shay, because we both did that together. So thank you. And I'll turn it over to Koa.
Thank you. All right. Hello, everybody. So now that we've obviously gone over these sort of good practices in asynchronous tutoring, why don't we go over an example of where we can see some of these kind of at play. So this is actually Nilo's voice thread for someone named Brett Wilcox, where he goes over a cover letter and resume. And I chose this one because Nilo does a few things really well. We're not gonna go through all the comments. We are gonna go through a few of them. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna let them, we'll see if this works. Can you guys hear Nilo? Dang it. Okay.
Do you know how to do it, Koa?
I do not.
Okay, so stop sharing.
Got it.
And then when you go to screen share, click it again.
Mhm.
And before you press the share blue button.
The share sound, right?
Yeah, you got it. Yep.
Got it. Thank you. So let me double check here.
Hello, Brett. I'm Nilo. I'll be your tutor for today.
Wonderful. So let's go ahead and get started. I'm just going to let a few of these comments play through just so we can see some of these. And then I'm going to go ahead and talk about some of the things that Nilo did and kind of dissect it and show things that he can maybe do better. But most importantly, things that he's doing really well in following those best practices. So let's go ahead and start with the intro one, just because I do want to bring attention to something that Nilo is doing here.
Hello, Brett. I'm Nilo. I'll be your tutor for today. Thank you so much for submitting your work here on VoiceThread for feedback. I'm going to go ahead, give all of this material a read over and provide feedback, and I'm going to answer all your concerns and questions to the best of my ability. Just remember that if you do want to talk over my feedback more, or if you have any questions about any feedback I provide, you won't be able to ask questions here on VoiceThread, at least not directly. So if you want to talk this out more, you can go ahead and schedule another appointment, either for VoiceThread or for a traditional face-to-face appointment. With all that, let's get started.
So awesome. Nilo's doing a really good job here. And obviously we all know how to do these introductions, but the main reason why I'm putting this here is because I really want to bring attention to Nilo's pacing. I've done a lot of these VoiceThread appointments, and I'm quickly starting to realize that since I'm saying the same thing almost every time, I start to get really fast, where I'm like, hi, everybody. Thanks for submitting your work here for asynchronous tutoring. I'm going to leave video and voice comments here and respond to concerns as best I can. And I was going through all of my examples and I was finding, oh, I'm getting faster and faster. And I think it's good to remember that this may be the tutee's first time seeing an asynchronous appointment, and this information is important to them. So make sure you're speaking at a pace that they can. That is a traditional pace, and Nilo's doing a great job of being friendly. He immediately starts with the tutee's name. He's not saying, thanks for submitting your work. He's saying, hey, Brett, thanks for submitting your work here. Lets us know who he is and goes into all those details about what the VoiceThread is like, how, again, it's video and voice comments if he wants to get additional information, so on and so forth. Something I think Nilo could potentially do here is actually include the assignment name and the class name, as well as the specific concerns of the tutee, just to clear up, just for absolute clarity. He does say work here, but I think it is always beneficial to just say, oh, thanks for submitting X, Y, and Z of what it specifically is. That way there's absolutely no confusion. So they're like, oh, okay, we're on the same page. And then as well as listing the concerns that the tutee puts in the email is really good, just because in the beginning, the tutee will be like, oh, okay, it's not, it wasn't just like a form I filled out. The tutor is actually reading those things and is going to keep those in mind. Nilo does actually do something about that earlier or later on this that I do want to sort of go over here. But with that in mind, let's go ahead and move on to another comment here, because I think that is a really solid example of kind of like a welcoming thing. We're not going to, I was going to do sort of 2 comments here, but for the purposes of time, we're going to do 1 comment here about how he frames his feedback, because I think Nilo does an awesome job of framing feedback in this one. So we're going to go over to this one right here.
All right, Brett. So the next thing we want to think about are some examples that kind of back up your assertions here about your qualifications in this paragraph. So you do a very good job at listing all of your qualifications and your skills, right? More than 10 years of experience, highly energetic person with exceptional interpersonal skills, thrive under pressure, able to integrate, problem solving. These are all great things that the employer is likely to be looking for. And especially if they were specific qualifications that they put on the job listing and you're backing that up, that would be, awesome. But here's the thing, we want to think about how you display these things in the workplace. Excuse me. So you mentioned how you're currently working at CAM as a student teacher, and you've run multiple afternoons, after school programs rather, throughout the Pleasant Valley School District. Okay, so what are some examples from those 2 jobs that demonstrate these skills? We want to add some of those examples, and it doesn't even have to be an entire paragraph. It can be 1 or 2 sentences about specific duties or responsibilities you had at these jobs, which show that you have these qualifications, right? What do these qualifications look like in practice? Because you can claim that you have these skills, and you can tell us that you are this type of person, but it helps a lot if you show the employer, if you show them that in practice, and if you give them some evidence and back up those claims, So again, go more into detail about your responsibilities at these jobs. First, it shows your experience, and then it backs up those claims you make. And then the employers reviewing this cover letter will know that you truly are a qualified individual for this position. All right, so go ahead and back up those qualifications.
So in this comment here, and he kind of does it in the similar comments, Nilo does a really good job of framing it immediately with the sort of compliment sandwich. It's very kind of subtle to see, especially with the second compliment, but he immediately starts with, okay, the focus is going to be on the skills. And then he starts listing them. And you can see as he starts listing them with Brett, he starts to sort of underline them, letting us know, okay, these are the different things you're doing. And then after immediately listing those skills, he again reaffirms that these are good skills. These are things that can be useful for sort of an employer to look forward. And so he has that immediately framing of, okay, this is what we're going to look at. You're doing great thus far. Here are the different skills. Again, these are good skills, And then he goes into that feedback section where he starts to talk about, again, how you can have some examples to back up those qualifications. And I think what Nilo does really well is in this last like 30, 40 seconds of this is almost entirely based on justification and purpose. So explaining why this is really good, because again, we're not going to have, as it is with asynchronous tutoring, the tutee is not going to be able to ask those clarifying questions. So Nilo is really sort of taking his time to explain the logic behind why this feedback is helpful, why it is this way, so that way it's as clear as possible. Again, something that Nilo is doing fairly consistently throughout this is these are a little bit on the longer side and they can be potentially condensed, but I think that is largely due to the tone and the sort of tonation that Nilo is sort of speaking in here. And I think they are coming closer to 3 minutes, which is usually like getting to be pretty long. But despite that, he's doing a really good job of sort of hitting these different aspects. Also, something that I want to bring attention to is Nilo has a really awesome use of kind of like this almost a little bit of nudging, which he does kind of like right here.
The workplace.
Which
Excuse
is.
Me. So you mentioned how you're currently working at CAM as a student teacher.
Yeah, so he mentions right here essentially how Brett here is working as a student teacher, and he's saying kind of like nudging towards Brett, like, hey, maybe you can take some of the examples that you've had in this place and use them to back up some of your skills here. So again, it showcases that Nilo is looking over the entirety of the document and he's looking at, okay, so you've already sort of listed some examples here, so why not use some of the stuff you have here and use those as examples? So I think Nilo's, again, doing that good job of sort of connecting everything together, and there's clear intention here. Okay. All right, so is okay. Oh, we're gonna go ahead and move forward to sort of another comment here. Sorry about that, just got a quick call. This comment's very, very short, but I think it's awesome what Neil is doing here because sometimes we forget to do this. It's very short.
So for this last comment, no critique here. I just really wanted to say that this is a very well-written cover letter. I'm finding no grammatical errors, but more importantly, it's very articulate, eloquent as well. And it shows that you have a strength for writing, right?
Okay, so what I really want to bring attention to this comment is sometimes in asynchronous tutoring, we forget the niceties. As that's what the compliment sandwiches are for, but sometimes in synchronous tutoring, you may quickly just have a small comment and be like, hey, I think you did a really good job here, or I think you're doing really well here. And I think sometimes we forget to do that in asynchronous sort of tutoring, and it's okay to have these little sort of tidbits in here being like, hey, you're doing a really good job here. In addition, I think this also covers Nilo's bases in the fact that if I were to make a guess, when Brett sent in this email and Nilo looked at the email that sent in everything, grammar was probably on one of those concerns, but Nilo didn't find any grammatical concerns other than one on the sort of next page. So this is kind of letting Brett know, hey, I didn't make any comments about grammatical errors because you're looking really good so far. So you don't really have to worry about that. And I think that's really important just because if he didn't include that, it maybe although us as tutors may be like, okay, we didn't comment on it because there's nothing to comment about, the tutee might be like, oh gosh, they didn't get to grammar. They were so focused on other things. I don't know if I was doing well in this aspect. And so having in those little sort of comments that kind of reiterate those aspects can be really good, especially if they're standalone, because something that I've done before is kind of tacking that onto feedback, even if it's not related to that feedback. And the danger of that is if they skip that comment or if they are only looking for the feedback there, they might forget about that little piece there. So having those individual little comments where you're kind of addressing all their concerns and complimenting them on what they're doing well, I think can be good, because sometimes we do forget, or at least I forget sometimes to be like, hey, you're doing this well. So I just wanted to bring attention to that. And then when it comes to this page over here, something that 2, 3, 4, Nilo does really, really awesome here.
All right,
whoopsies. Something that Nilo does really awesome here is that he actually gives a link to another resource. So I just want to quickly, let's play out just a little bit here.
In order for you to continue improving this cover letter and resume, I'm going to go ahead and provide a link to CSUCI's Career Center website in a text box below. And I'm going to specifically send you a link to the Student Resources webpage. And there you can find instructions as to how you can turn in resumes and cover letters for feedback to the Career Center.
So this is awesome because this is something that Nilo is doing that I didn't think of, which is Nilo knows of another resource on campus that can specifically help the student. So he's giving that to the student. For example, if someone needed help with citations, we give them a citation guide. If they need help looking through databases, we might direct them to the library or sort of the library staff or the live chat library feature. And I think sometimes it's easy to forget to include those different information in the asynchronous tutoring because it's largely just based on comments. And I just want to commend Nilo for doing that here, is he recognizes, hey, there's another service on campus that can help out the student. So he's providing that to him. So I think that's awesome. Use as much of the asynchronous platform as much as you can. So yeah, I just wanted to note that because I think that was really cool. And then lastly, we have this sort of final comment here. Ooh, whoopsies. We have this last comment here where Nilo begins to relate everything back. And I just want to play some of this. It is a little bit long, so I'm probably not going to play all of it, but I do want to bring attention to some of the things Nilo does here. Oh.
All right,
There we
Brett. So that about does it for me today. I think you had some really solid work here. You really did. We just need to focus on, providing some concrete examples from work in your cover letter. Maybe you can even take some of the things you've listed here on your resume and kind of like talk about that as examples on your cover letter, just to back up the qualifications you list. And then we want to think about the format and organization of this resume. Otherwise, really good work today. If you have any other questions on the feedback I provided, or if you want to talk about that more, remember to submit another appointment request form, either for a VoiceThread appointment or a face-to-face appointment, because you won't be able to ask questions directly here on VoiceThread. Lastly, I'm going to provide 2 links in the text box below. And these are going to be links to a couple of surveys.
So again, what Nilo's doing here is kind of what we need to do here for that final note. Again, he is the summary of everything that he's kind of talked about here. He's really putting attention to those examples or the qualifications and how they need examples. And he's even tying it into the resume now as well. Saying, hey, maybe not only can you maybe use some of the examples of some of the stuff you mentioned in the beginning of the cover letter, but you also have experience in the resume. Maybe you could pull some examples from those and use those to back up your qualifications. So again, kind of creating those tying threads to let Brett know, again, you have the stuff here, you can maybe just connect it a little better. And then he goes into all that good information of reminding him about the VoiceThread comments and things like that, how we can't respond to them and all that good stuff. So I think he did a good job kind of like of that sort of end note there. So overall, I think Nilo has done a really good job here. I chose this one specifically because of the tone and because I wasn't able to get to some of those other comments, but in the other comments where he's just talking about like those big feedback comments, he's doing an amazing job of framing them. It's always either it starts with, okay, here's what we're going to talk about, then a little compliment, then sort of reading it over, then another compliment, and then going into the reasoning and logic. And I think the reasoning and logic is really important because, again, they're not going to be able to ask clarifying questions. So we want to be as clear as possible. This is why we're doing this thing. This is why I think this will be helpful for your overall paper. I do think they were a little bit long on some cases, which can always be improved. And you can always keep in mind that if you have the time, you can always rewatch things or sort of re-record things and sort of go over it again. A lot of the times I'll start with a comment and I'll film it as if it's a comment and then I'll stop it and be like, I could have done that a little bit better. And I realized maybe they need to be in 2 comments and then sort of split it up from there. So don't be afraid to sort of delete some comments and sort of go back. And then other than that, I think Neil could have used a little more nudging questions. A lot of the sort of feedback he gave was a little more direct, but there was still a lot of really good framing. And that's why I mostly chose the example, because Neil does a really good job of sort of framing those questions. But that's an example of sort of a VoiceThread appointment that I thought was really, really good.
Thanks, Nilo. That was awesome. I want to open it up here. What do you all think are some of the best VoiceThread practices that you've seen or that you implement yourself? I want to like kind of trade some tips and tricks here because you all have a lot of experience.
Yeah, my favorite is breaking comments up. I think it's super helpful for me to kind of gauge my time also on the actual document, but make sure that it's not super long and they're not trying to follow something for too long, because then I think things get lost in translation. So I like to really break up my comments page by page and like paragraph by paragraph, and try to be explicit about like what paragraph I'm talking about or what sentence, and use a marker. That's the one thing I try to do most of the time.
Yeah, I was definitely going to say something similar to that with using the marker tool. I think it's really important for the tutor to know what you're talking about. Because I feel like if I was rewatching it and I haven't really looked in the paper in a while, I wouldn't really know where I put certain information. So I really love that feature about VoiceThread. And also I really like linking the citation guides as well.
Yeah, I'm a big marker fan too, and citations guide fan. And something that I've always thought is something that I want to include in my practices is going over the prompt with the 2T, even asynchronously, because I think that can be really helpful, using the markers there and still showing them, hey, this is the thing that we're trying to achieve. That way, if you're going through the paper, you can refer back to what you told them as well with the prompt.
For sure, that's a great idea. Have you guys experienced any challenges with VoiceThread tutoring that you are comfortable sharing or troubleshooting together?
I think the biggest issue for me is like seeing something that I just don't understand. Like they write something, it's unclear and I can't ask them what it means. And then I feel kind of bad when I'm making the comment being like, I don't know what this means, because I don't want to make them feel bad. So that's kind of something I struggle with for sure.
Has anyone else run into that? Do you have something you do to help out with that scenario?
I have, and I've been in that situation, and Shay has been like, just try to give your best input and effort and explain to them your struggle with it, and then share some recommendations of like different avenues that they can take. But his recommendation was like, just give it your best shot. My situations, it was like an add-on to, they didn't offer like a prompt, and then on their survey they didn't give any information as to like what they wanted to focus on.
Okay.
Yeah, so it was a trifecta of, I don't really know what I'm looking at, but I'll just give my suggestions. So that's kind of what I do, because then I look at it like, okay, if I was with that 2T right now and we don't have all that information, what would I give them? So that's kind of how I looked at it.
That's good. Yeah, giving it your best shot. And I think I've had that situation too. It can be awkward in person for me too, where I'm like, oh, I'm not sure what they mean. And I sometimes saying like, as a reader, can help me feel more comfortable saying it. Like, as a reader, I'm not totally following you here. It could be because it's discipline specific, or it could be because it could be more specific here. Maybe you need an example or something. Would you mind explaining it to me? And then once they explain it, I have a better idea if it's live. If it's not live, I would still just say, as a reader, I'm having a little trouble following here. So you might want to add more connections between these two sentences, or can you give an example here of what you mean? That way, anyone who's reading it totally follows your ideas here, so that they get, they get what you're getting at. Because you're doing them a favor, like it's going to make it better. It's going to make it clearer, which is good,
Something that I've also found because I've had a similar situation where it's like a sentence or a paragraph that I'm not sure what its purpose is, whether or not it's trying, I can't think of the exact example, but it's like, okay, is it trying to do this or this? And what I found, or what I've done previously, is essentially saying like, yeah, as a reader, I don't quite understand what the purpose of like this section is or what you're going for. I think it might be one of two things. And then from there, I make two separate comments as a reply to that comment, being like, hey, if you're trying to go for this, maybe, and I'll give feedback on that side. And then in a separate comment, I'll be like, if you're trying to do this, then you may want to try and go do those things. So it's kind of like trying to cover more bases, if that makes sense. It's like, I'm not really sure, but if it is like this or this, here is some advice when it comes to that, since I can't ask those clarifying questions.
That's great, Koet. That's a great idea. Very thorough. Any other challenges that you all have encountered in VoiceThread?
not necessarily a challenge, but also something I just quickly wanted to state of like something that I find useful that I practice that I didn't realize I could do until a long while. But when you're like filming a comment, you can go through the different pages and it'll like go through the different like comment and stuff like that, and it'll like still be on one page when they look at the comment. And to me, that's really helpful because a lot of times it'll be like, oh, you mentioned this, and I'll go back 2 pages and circle something, be like, you mentioned this here. And I think that can help to be like, help emulate that tutor sort of 2T interaction, because it's not just like I'm only looking at this page. No, I'm looking at the entire thing, and I can actually show you as if we were in person where I'm talking about it. And I think that is something that's really helpful because it can help visualize, okay, you're doing this well, you connect this from here to here. I'm not sure if this really makes sense with this sort of paragraph here. You may want to like swap these two.
Yeah, that's so true. I hope everyone does know that you can move around as you comment. Yeah. Has anyone run into the scenario where somebody sends you a blank paper, essentially, like one sentence, and they're like, I don't understand the prompt, or I need help brainstorming in VoiceThread? Yes, Dorothy, how did that go?
Well, I'm not sure entirely what happened, but all I got was a prompt. And so in that case, like I checked in with the essay. I was like, hey, did they forget to send in the rest of their paper? And they were like, no, they just didn't finish yet. And I was like, okay, well, and then we called them and saw like, oh, you can make another appointment if you want, but for now I'll just break down the prompt for you, kind of thing. And that's what I ended up doing. Not brainstorming though. That would be really interesting. Asynchronous brainstorming.
That's great, Dorothy. I love that you took advantage of the time that you had to give feedback anyway. I think that's the best that we can do in that kind of scenario. I did see one. I was going through the VoiceThread account in preparation for this workshop partially, and I noticed that somebody submitted a prompt at one point in the fall semester with one incomplete sentence as their start to the paper. And they were like, I don't understand what I'm supposed to do. Like, I'm not sure, you know, and I need help brainstorming this and whatever. And I was like, oh man, that is a hard one. But I think the answer is exactly what you said, which is we try to do what we can do. You know, you break down the prompt and then you give feedback as best you can without giving them an idea, you know, that's yours, or, you know, not writing the paper for them, right? But sort of trying to navigate them through that, and also encouraging them to make a synchronous appointment for that kind of thing. And you guys can always do that. If you feel like, you know, we put that on the request form as well. Like, it's not good for brainstorming, it's not good for capstone projects necessarily, things that require more conversation surrounding it. If that ever happens to you, you know, do your best and then suggest that they make a synchronous appointment if at all possible. Yeah. Any other questions or feedback or thoughts that you all wanted to share?
I did have another thing to share, which is last semester I had 2 asynchronous appointment requests that were 17 pages each, and each one was single spaced. And so it was a lot of work, and I was like, whoa. And immediately that kind of like threw me off. And I just like, as a note, just keep in mind that if you are going to be getting a lot of work, keep in mind that you're not expected to go through all of it. If you can't, just like in a normal tutoring session, if you're given a whole capstone and you have an hour, you're not expected to go through the entire capstone in that hour. So just because it's asynchronous, and just because in theory it's like something you can do at any time, you're only blocked off for an hour. So do as much as you can in that hour, and be upfront about that in the beginning of the tutoring session. Be like, and that's what I did for both of them. I was like, hey, I do have a sort of limited time that I can work on this, like a sort of normal tutoring session. So I'm going to go through this as much as I can. I'm going to try and focus on some of your specific concerns, but just know I won't have the ability to go through all of it. I may run out of time here. And I think that is good to sort of keep in mind in case you do get some of those sort of larger documents.
I like that because I have ran into papers where it's almost 11 pages and I'm like, okay, let me try to space this out to try to get it all done. But we only have that hour. And so I always feel guilty if I'm not able to get it through all the way. So I try to do a quick scan at the end and give like what I can see really quick. So I like that.
And it is a skill that's important as a tutor, is to scan things, you know, even in person. It's, you know, very helpful to read out loud, but it's not the case that that works with every single scenario. And especially with a longer paper, it's good to get the picture of it as a whole so that you're not making comments about something that they included then, 3 pages from now, or, it ends up being irrelevant. So skimming a little bit is really helpful. Does anybody have tactics for skimming? Do you all know how to skim a little bit? So just a couple things. You want to read the first sentence and the last sentence of the paragraph for sure. And then you want to look for keywords as you're reading. So it's almost like reading a textbook or anything else where you don't have a lot of time and you need to get the reading in, but you are looking for key terms, key references, and you're reading the first and last sentence of every paragraph and then looking if they have the supporting details essentially as you skim through, and looking if they're connecting each paragraph organization. You get a basic idea of the content that way. So I'd encourage you to do that, not just for VoiceThread, but for Synchronous as well. Whenever you have something that you're like, we're not going to get through this in an hour, it's a good idea to take a minute and just skim it and ask them if there's certain areas they want to focus on so that they're getting the feedback that they want and need. And, we're not always starting from the top, reading out loud. Yeah. Sorry, my kids are walking through the garage as usual. Has anyone not met my kids at the WMC? Any other questions or comments or anything? Okay. Well, I think we can end this a couple of minutes early. Nothing wrong with that. I know it's been a long day for a lot of people and going back to back to back to back on these. So thank you so much for coming and share your best practices, please. I hope this is like, wildfire or something where it spread, all the good ideas spread. So please, when you talk to people about VoiceThread, let them know that, that you have ideas to share that people are doing. And thank you again for coming today. I look forward to working with you all this semester again. It'd be great.
Thank you both.
Thank you for all the helpful tips.
Thank you,
Thank
Kala.
you. See you.
Yeah, thank you again for having me here and letting me speak on asynchronous tutoring and stuff like that.
Thank you. It was awesome. Have a great night, everybody.
You too.
Thanks.